What's up, guys? I'm Jake.
And I'm Dustin.
And together, we are MACkites. And today, we are here to talk to you guys about the 2024 Reedin line, in particular, the Super and Hypermodel. One thing we've really liked about Reedin is they've kept it so simple. One kite, and honestly, I think our bias probably shows, but we love that one kite. So they took that model, and they've now expanded the range. So you had the Hypermodel, which was kind of just the generic Dacron, really solid all-around kite. The HTF, which is the high torsion frame, which we'll get into a little bit more what the performance differences are there. And then they expanded that to the Hypermodel, which is the Aluula version. So for 2024, at least as of this juncture, the basic Supermodel has been discontinued in favor of the HTF version 2 and the Hypermodel. So there's a lot going on, so we figured we'd talk about what we like about each model, who each one is for, to help you guys get dialed in on the best Reedin kite for you. So Dustin, you've been spending a bit of time on the new HTF 2, loving it.
Absolutely loving it. Lot of noticeable upgrades this year. You know, usually sometimes we just get very basic upgrades from year to year, but they really outdid themselves this year, so I'm super stoked on it. It's been a while since I've just been like really hyped up about a new kite. So yep, been on the new Supermodel HTF V2 a bit the past couple weeks. Right away, the 12-point bridle system coming from an 8 for the last model is making the kite a lot more responsive, quicker. Haven't had a chance to loop it yet, but I can see how it's guys are already double looping it. So.
And it's a direct bridle, right? There's no pulleys or anything?
Correct, yep.
So that means when you're pulling on the bar, you're getting that instant feedback.
Yep. Versus
any kind of delay.
Absolutely love it. So yep, been really, really stoked on this model. They made some basic stitching upgrades to kind of help disperse the load a little bit better across the kite. Yeah, so.
And HTF, that high torsion frame, we ride and sell kites, we don't design them. So we can try to explain it our best of our ability. Is when you look at a kite, there's certain portions you want stiff and certain portions you want to have more flexibility when it comes to moving that kite, pivoting it, looping it. From what I understand, that the HTF really kind of stiffens up the center of the kite and leaves more of that flex near the wingtips.
Yep, so they added an extra torsion zone. So they had one on the very end of the wingtips, and then it's a bit of that stiff Dacron, and then they added another segment of the torsion frame.
Okay.
And then the main part of the frame is going to be that stiff Dacron.
Okay.
So it makes the kite pivot even tighter.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And then we saw some weight reduction with that as well.
Yep. On the 9 meter, I think it's 550 grams, so about 15% from the last model, which is awesome. So yeah.
So when it comes to comparing that weight difference, obviously the big benefit you get with a kite like the Hypermodel, the Aluula material, lighter, stiffer. So this Hypermodel, according to Reedin, is about 20% lighter than the version 1 HTF, whereas this year's HTF is 15% lighter than last year's HTF. So we're talking probably about a 10% weight difference between the HTF 2 and the Hypermodel. Maybe those numbers aren't exact, but either way, the Hypermodel is slightly lighter, and again, that's owing to the Aluula, and it's going to be stiffer. You know, that Aluula allows you to run a smaller diameter leading edge. That is going to result in the Hypermodel probably having some performance advantages over the HTF2, even though the HTF2 is a dang good kite.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, probably going to want to rock a 3-kite quiver with the HTF, where with the Hypermodel you can rock probably a 2-kite quiver. The wind range is going to be a little bit better on the Hypermodel with the Aluula and the lightweight. They do make a new lightweight version of the HTF, which is going to be a 16 meter and a 14 meter. And then the standard HTF V2 is going to come in 4 meter to 12 meter.
So when it comes to which kite you would choose to have in your quiver, what are you going with? Hypermodel? HTF2?
Tough call. Right now, where I'm at, I think I'm gonna go HTF 2 just for the upgrades that it comes with. If I had the money, I would go with the Hypermodel. You know, for traveling and just, you know, going with the two-kite quiver versus the three. But, you know, I'm balling on a budget, so I think HTF 2 is gonna be the win for me.
I'm inclined to agree. I know when we've talked about Aluula in the past, we get accused of being elitist snobs. You know, that inherently, you know, that's a fair critique because it is an expensive material, but it's also a material that is driving the top end performance of the sport forward. So it's not for everybody, but there are people who it makes sense. It's like any other sport. You can buy the very highest bleeding edge. You know, reasons to buy that. You have the money and you want the best, or it's your sport and you spend so much time participating in it that you benefit from those performance differences. So I think the Hypermodel is probably the pinnacle of the Supermodel, but dang, that HTF too is
it's a tough
pretty
call.
flippin' close.
Yep. I will say that the Hypermodel drives a little bit more forward in the wind window, whereas this guy kind of sits a bit, I wouldn't say further back, but not quite far as forward as the Hypermodel. Hypermodel is going to have the medium to light bar pressure, whereas the HTF is going to be a little bit more grunty with that medium bar pressure.
Okay, good consideration.
So,
in terms of color, you know, there is something to be said about the gold on the water. Although that new space lavender purple, I think that's instant icon.
Yeah, I am super in love with the new, the space lavender.
Yeah, I love the purple. So yeah, you can't go wrong with your choice. In terms of price, we're gonna go 12 meters across the board. So the original Supermodel V3, which again is not currently in the line anymore, that started at $13.99 for the 12 meter. So the HTF 2 is going to be $16.95. So we're talking about a $300 premium. I think one thing that Reedin's always done very well is having a great value. Their kites are relatively affordable. I mean, $13.99 for a 12 meter for what you get, it's a great frickin' price. You know, even with the HTF 2 being a bit more expensive, I think it's right in line with most other brands, and the technology story is really compelling. The Hypermodel might blow your socks off. This bad boy is $29.15. So we're talking almost a $1,200 difference from the HTF 2 to the Hypermodel. For most people, just honestly, I don't think it's worth it. But again, if you've got the money, if you want the best, there is a performance difference.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I think if you're traveling a bunch, definitely the Hypermodel is the way to go. You know, having that tight travel pack that can kind of do it all is pretty sick.
Yeah, you just won the lottery. Treat yourself.
Oh yeah, man.
Hypermodels, whole quiver.
Yep.
But you're just down here grinding with the rest of us. I think the HTF 2, you're going to get, I don't know, probably 80-90% of the performance of the Hypermodel, and you're going to be really stoked.
Yeah.
But there is some performance advantage there. Just, you know, you got to define that for yourself.
Yep.
Anyway, you can't go wrong. In summary, the quiver this year, we've got the HTF 2, the HTF 2 light wind, and then the Aluula Hypermodel. Reedin, keep doing what you're doing. You're making awesome kites. Keep it simple. It's just a do everything. It's a joy to kiteboard. When I think of kiteboarding, I think of kites like this.
Yep, exactly.
Guys, as always, thanks for checking us out. If you have any questions, hit us up. You know where to find us most of the time. We look forward to seeing you out there on the water.